There is hardly a greater topic than first love as a teenager. And even as an adult, you still think back to it. Some with a smile, others with negative feelings. But for most people, first love, the first relationship, is a guide, an indicator of everything that comes after. A way to learn what you are looking for in a partnership. In any case, it is an experience, and you grow from experiences if you are given the time. In 2019, a young girl in England is robbed of that time. And it is inconceivable what happened in the last hours of the innocent girl. "2019 is set to be a big year for Ellie Rose Gould. The girl is just 17 years old and is preparing for her A-level exams. Ellie, whose real name is Eleanor, is in the 12th grade at Hardnish School in Chippenham. The town is located in the southwest of England, near Bristol. Ellie lives with her parents in a cozy house in nearby Calm. Other family members also live nearby, including cousins around Ellie's age. The children grow up together. In any case, everyone in the community knows everyone else, at least by sight. Ellie is popular and often does things with her friends. Ellie has already thought about what she will do after school. She would like to either join the police force or maybe even study psychology if her exams go well enough. But she is keen on the idea of perhaps being able to work in the police mounted division because the teenager is an enthusiastic equestrian and takes part in many tournaments. But at the beginning of 2019, Ellie's life is not only dominated by her upcoming graduation. She also has a boyfriend for the first time. She starts dating Thomas Griffiths, a classmate. Ellie and Thomas have known each other since junior high school, and in January 2019, sparks start flying between them. Ellie is over the moon, having had a crush on her classmate for quite some time. The two had repeatedly approached each other in the 10th and 11th grades, but now, at the end of the 12th, they are finally together. Ellie soon invites Thomas to her home so that her parents can meet her boyfriend. Ellie's father, in particular, is not particularly enthusiastic. Thomas is very quiet, and the two don't seem to connect properly. But the most important thing for Ellie's parents is that their daughter is happy. The Goulds also realize that this is Ellie's first relationship. The likelihood that it will last in the long term is rather low, so they are quite relaxed and let their daughter have her own experiences. And at first, things seem to be going really well with Thomas. Despite the somewhat uncomfortable atmosphere, Thomas is a welcome guest at the Goulds. He even attends family gatherings. Thomas seems quite attentive to Ellie. He has a part-time job alongside school and can afford quite a few gifts for his girlfriend, who is the same age as he is. Ellie often feels guilty because she can't give Thomas the same gifts. In retrospect, Ellie's mother describes Thomas's behavior towards her daughter as classic love bombing. In a love bombing, one partner showers the other with attention, financial or material gifts, and compliments at the beginning of the relationship to an extent that goes far beyond healthy behavior. If one of the two sides cannot give just as much in return, an imbalance arises in the relationship. Although Ellie and Thomas are just graduating, Thomas is talking about getting married and having children together. Meanwhile, Ellie is in the middle of preparing for her exams. The fact that Thomas is taking their young relationship so seriously is overwhelming for the teenager. The upcoming A-levels are getting Ellie down, and she is struggling with the pressure of the exams. And on top of that, there is the relationship with Thomas. Ellie tells her friends that she sometimes feels confined by him. Thomas wants to see Ellie as often as possible. When she once turns down an invitation to a meeting because she wants to do something with her mother, Thomas bombards her with messages all evening long. The next day, he shows up unannounced at the Gould's home to see Ellie, even though she had previously asked him not to drop by spontaneously. Ellie's parents also notice this negative behavior on the part of her boyfriend. Ellie's mother speaks to the teenager about it and says that Thomas seems downright obsessive. Ellie replies that she realizes her boyfriend's behavior is not normal. She tells her mother she will fix it. On May 2nd, 2019, she decides to break up with Thomas. It's all just getting a little too much for her. She wants to focus on her A-levels, not on the stress she's experiencing because of her boyfriend. At around 6 p.m., Ellie sends a few messages to friends telling them about her breakup with Thomas. She writes that he hasn't taken it very well. And in a way, it's understandable. No one likes to break up with someone. But at this point, no one can guess how badly Thomas is taking the breakup. On May 3rd, 2019, Thomas's mother drives him to school. As usual, she drops him off right in front of the school building. But Thomas has no intention of attending class that day. Instead, he pulls out his smartphone and uses email to call in sick. From school, he walks to the Chippenham bus station and takes the bus back home. Thomas's mother is also back home by now. Thomas hides from her. He doesn't want her to know that he's skipping school. Thomas waits in his bedroom closet until his mother leaves the house again. When the coast is clear, he grabs his parents' car keys and drives to Ellie's house. It is about 11 o'clock in the morning there. Thomas doesn't stay long, though. Before noon, he leaves the Gould's house again. Neither Ellie nor Thomas are at school that day. All classes have been canceled for the 17-year-old that morning. She could have still gone to school to study, though. But at breakfast, she tells her mother that she would rather study in peace at home. Ellie doesn't have another history lesson until the afternoon. Her friend is going to pick her up at lunchtime and then drive to school with her. But that morning, her friend receives a Snapchat message from Ellie's account. It says that Ellie would rather stay at home and use the time to study on her own, so she doesn't need to pick her up anymore. At around 3 p.m., Ellie Gould's father enters the family home and finds his own daughter dead on the kitchen floor. It is immediately clear that Ellie cannot be saved. The kitchen floor is covered in her blood and a kitchen knife is stuck in her neck. Her lifeless hand is around the handle. She's lying face down in a large pool of blood. In shock, he calls his wife, Ellie's mother. He stammers that she has to come home immediately. Ellie has had an accident. The normally very calm man is in a state of total disarray. Ellie's mother immediately knows that the situation must be serious. While she's driving home from work, he calls the emergency services. Unfortunately, the first responders can no longer do anything for the girl. When Ellie's mother arrives home, she's met by her husband, who is still in shock. Mr. Gould can only stammer that Ellie has had an accident. She is dead. For Mrs. Gould, none of this makes sense. Ellie had told her at breakfast that she had another hour of history in the afternoon. So why is she home at all? And what kind of accident did her daughter have? Mrs. Gould stands outside her house while paramedics and police officers take care of her daughter's body inside. Mrs. Gould repeatedly asks her husband what might have happened. Did Ellie perhaps climb up on a chair to get something out of a tall cupboard and fall down? Did Ellie somehow get burned while cooking or suffer an electric shock and then bang her head against the table? Ellie's father is just as distraught and at a loss as his wife. But there is one thing he can tell her in his state of shock. Ellie didn't just bang her head. There would have been too much blood on the floor for that. Perhaps Mr. Gould was so shocked at the sight of his daughter's body that he didn't even see the knife sticking in her throat. And he didn't see that Ellie's hand was clutching the knife as if she had tried to stab herself. However, experienced investigators quickly realized that Ellie couldn't possibly have inflicted the wounds on herself. She has multiple stab wounds all over her body, at least 13. Most of the injuries were on the left side of her neck. But even before the stab wounds were inflicted, an attacker must have put pressure on Ellie's neck, so much so that she was incapacitated, probably unconscious. Someone must have murdered the 17-year-old. And very quickly, the police have a specific suspicion as to who the perpetrator might be. On the evening of May 3rd, 2019, less than 3 hours after Ellie's body was found, Thomas Griffith was arrested. A neighbor of the Goulds had seen him enter the house that morning. And as Ellie's recently separated ex-boyfriend, he was the first person of interest for the investigators anyway. But at first, Thomas denies having anything to do with Ellie's death. He says he went to Ellie's house that morning to study with her. She wanted to go to school that afternoon to prepare for her exams. However, the two then got into an argument. Thomas does not want to reveal the reason for the argument. Only after extensive questioning did he admit to having grabbed Ellie by the throat during the argument. After that, he blacked out. The next thing Thomas could remember was standing over Ellie's lifeless body, knife in hand. Despite this statement, he refuses to admit to murdering his ex-girlfriend. However, the evidence is quite clear against him. Bloody kitchen towels are found in a forest near Thomas's parents' house. Thomas apparently tried to clean the crime scene with them, but to no avail. Blood was also found on the black van, and the blood was definitely Ellie Gould's. Thomas not only tried to clean up his own traces at the scene of the crime, he also deliberately tried to stage a suicide. He put the knife in Ellie's hand to make it look like she took her own life. He also sent messages on Ellie's phone after she was killed, including one to her friends saying that Ellie wouldn't be coming to class that day. On the afternoon of May 3rd, Thomas also sent the following message to a group chat with mutual friends of his and Ellie via his own account. "I think everyone has noticed that I've been very down lately, and I have to tell you why. Me and Ellie are taking a break and seeing how things go after the exams. Also, my dad has cancer and my grandma was in the hospital with heart problems. I've been so stressed lately and don't know how to deal with it. I've been scratching my neck until it bled recently. And since this group has become my best friends, so to speak, I don't know who else to talk to." When Thomas came home after visiting Ellie at midday on May 3rd, he met a neighbor. Thomas had visible bloody scratches on his neck. In the message, he said he had hurt himself. However, the police believe that Ellie caused the injury when she tried to defend herself against Thomas. Thomas himself probably realized how suspicious the whole thing looks. By posting a message to the chat group, he tried to construct an excuse for the scratches. There are also surveillance camera recordings showing Thomas in the car on his way to the Gould's house. The GPS data from his cell phone also places him there during the time of the crime. The case is therefore quite clear. Thomas Griffiths murdered his ex-girlfriend, who was the same age as him. Although he initially refused to admit the crime, Thomas confessed during a hearing on August 29, 2019. Ultimately, he was found guilty and convicted of the murder of Ellie Gould. He was given a life sentence. However, there was a catch. At the time of the crime, Thomas was only 17 years old and therefore a minor. Furthermore, Thomas did not bring the murder weapon himself. Instead, he only reached for a knife at the scene of the crime in the Gould's kitchen. And from this, one could deduce that the killing of Ellie was not planned, but was carried out in the heat of the moment. Therefore, it is determined that Thomas Griffiths will be able to apply for parole after 12.5 years. So, shortly before his 30th birthday in 2032. Ellie's friends and family are shocked by the verdict. The idea that Thomas should spend fewer years in prison than Ellie has had in her entire life seems more than unfair to them. Since then, Ellie's mother in particular has been campaigning for tougher sentences for young violent offenders, in the hope that there will be sentences in comparable cases that seem fairer to the relatives. That's the end of today's video. What are your thoughts on the punishment Thomas Griffiths received? Do you agree with Ellie's relatives that young people should be punished just as harshly as adults? Or do you have other thoughts on the matter? I'm curious to hear your opinion and look forward to reading from you. By the way, commenting supports the channel, as do likes and subscriptions. All interaction increases the likelihood that the video will be recommended to people who have not yet subscribed to Insolito. Otherwise, there is not much more to say. I wish you a good morning, afternoon, or evening, or whenever it is that you are watching this video, and hope that we will see each other again in the next video. Until then, ciao guys.